Back to the show, House GOP Chief Deputy Whip Peter Roskam from the great state of Illinois. Peter, great to see you, as always. A lot of movement now, so I want to ask you, do you think it's possible here, post-election, as the stock market literally hammers Washington with this sell-off, will Democrats and Republicans rise above partisan politics and get us something that can work?
I think that there's a tremendous opportunity, Larry, and here's why. Speaker Boehner yesterday gave a statement, a 10 or 12-minute statement, and he offered his sincere congratulations to President Obama. And he said, look, we're willing to talk about more revenues. These are revenues that we think that can come as a result of a growing economy, and the House has already acted on one proposal that says move forward and extend the current tax rates for one more year and use that as a bridge to tax reform. Or there were voices on the Democratic side that were saying, well, let's just go over the fiscal cliff. Well, that's a bucket of crazy. Nobody wants to go over the fiscal cliff. It's ridiculous.
Certainly that's one of the messages of the stock market here, right, post-election. Just let me ask you, though, it's an important point you made. Mr. Boehner saying revenues could be on the table. Is that a Republican concession? And if it is a Republican concession, what do you all want from the Democrats as their concession?
Well, I think it's how these things are characterized many times. You know, in the debate between Mitt Romney and Barack Obama, Obama laid out this notion that somehow Romney was not in favor of any more revenues, and Romney debunked that and said, look, we're in favor of revenues, and I think he was largely speaking for the Republican Party at that point. We're in favor of more revenues. The Ryan budget, for example, had revenue assumptions in it. So I think what's got to happen is that both sides have to let the other team take a little bit of a victory lap. So let Republicans come into this debate where we keep tax rates low and reasonable and predictable and drive towards tax reform next year. Democrats can come into the debate and claim a victory and say, well, we're interested in more revenues. The key is, can we get to these underlying situations, and that is entitlement reform. That's where the action is.
Okay, but how realistic is it to postpone or extend everything for a year? As I understand it, this is in the Wall Street Journal editorial page this morning, and I've heard this elsewhere, that Mr. Boehner would like to just extend the tax cuts, and I don't know what you all are going to do about spending. Nobody ever wants to cut spending. Is that realistic? Is that a bridge? In other words, put it off, give yourself a full year 2013, and avoid the catastrophe right in the next 50 days.
Yes, it's realistic, and here's why. President Obama, in December of 2010, this exact same time, extended these rates one time already. So the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior.
But he ran against it, Peter. Pardon me for interrupting, but he ran against it pretty explicitly.
Oh, look,
some of his lieutenants, like Senators, Chuck Schumer has been saying, you know, or Harry Reid, you know this, Harry Reid saying this was a mandate to raise marginal income tax rates. That's what they're saying. What's your response?
The president has said all kinds of things, right? He said he was going to close Guantanamo. He said he was going to do a comprehensive immigration reform in the first year. He said he was going to cut the deficit in half, and he was going to go through the federal budget line by line. Set that all aside as flowery rhetoric that he used to pump up his base. The reality is Barack Obama has signed a law in the past to extend these rates. I predict he will do it again simply because the House is not going to pass a tax hike. It's just not going to happen. And in the words of Harry Reid, who many times over the past several months has said, let's focus on things that the House or that the Senate can actually do. Well, let's focus on something that can actually pass the House.
All right, so what happens? Do we have a powwow? Just give me, how does this play out? Because the clock is ticking and the stock market is ticking down. That's what worries us on Wall Street. Is there a powwow? Do you set up a process, or is it just Boehner, Obama, and Reid? How does this work, Peter?
Well, I think procedurally what ends up happening is these three men need to come to an agreement, and I would argue the sooner the better. There's no percentage in dragging this thing out and playing a you know, the countdown type of drama. There's nothing good that's going to happen there. I think they need to agree in principle. Look, and the House has been working over the past 2 years on a tax reform agenda that is focused in on one word, and that is competitiveness. That's been led by Dave Camp as chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. So this tax reform effort is all teed up, and the country is highly dissatisfied with the current tax code, and it's an incredible opportunity for everybody to come together. And I'm not here pumping sunshine, telling you that it's easy, but what I am saying is that there is a unique opportunity to bring people together because nobody in their right mind should push us over this cliff.
Last question, quickly, if you will. Look, the president, in his victory speech the other night, said reform, he said tax reform, entitlement reform, immigration reform. Let's just do deficit and tax reform. Do you believe that he is being sincere? Do you believe that for whatever reasons and motives, there's a new era coming in Washington?
I choose to hope that he is sincere, and the proof will be if how he chooses to lead. I know that he's got a willing Speaker of the House that's willing to work on a good faith basis with the President of the United States, and I hope he takes him up on that.
You know, I couldn't agree with you more. I choose to believe that something is going on here at the American people's request, at the American people's demand. I think you're exactly right. My attitude about this, Peter, is I'm waiting to see. I'm waiting to see. Maybe we'll all be pleasantly surprised.
That's
Congressman
right.
Peter Roskam of Illinois, thank you very much
Thanks,
for your
Larry.
insights. CNBC, by the way, has a special report on the